Okay, so it's week 11, and this is lecture 21. We're in the wind chapter, but we're also right in the middle of summary 4. And summary 4 asks us to compare really the economics of a wind installation versus a geothermal installation. And if I'm not mistaken, I showed you this one slide, which I'll show you again to reiterate the point here. This is a talk that I gave in Billings. There's one slide in particular that's important here. Slide 54? No way, come on. Is that possible? I gave so many slides. I think I gave 75 slides in 40 minutes. It is possible. This is one of the most fun talks I think I ever gave. Let's let him have it.
I was just looking at it.
Whole thing. Oh, were you really? Yeah. It's 57. Look at that. Okay, so again, I don't know a tremendous amount about this particular organization, but this so-called solutions project has gone through and it made an attempt anyway to optimize, if you will, the 100% renewable energy profiles on a state-by-state basis. And so I would assume that this was done more or less on an economic basis, right? So, for example, just to be kind of to be silly about it, you know, how expensive would a tidal energy system in Montana be? Well, let's see, you'd have to dig all the way to the ocean and tap, you know. So what they're doing is looking for local resources, and that's really the point of the geothermal versus the wind exercise. You know, what's there, what's readily available, and so this profile that has been developed, you know, comes up with 9% geothermal. Now, they don't really make a distinction here whether it's high enthalpy or low enthalpy. We'll get into that when we talk about geothermal. They don't talk about whether it's residential scale, institutional scale, grid scale, but assuming there's some of each, it adds up to 9%. And if we just look at wind, well, in this case, we're looking at onshore wind specifically, comes out to be 35%. So what this tells me, if I were just going to sort of, you know, roll the dice or throw a dart at the state of Montana, 35 times out of 44, the wind is going to be your better bet. Now, but that's not to say that there's not one special place in Montana where geothermal and wind are both really good bets. So that, you know, and the other big point here is that it's not an either or. It never is. And when you get into these arguments, people, oh, this will never work, that'll never work. That everything works. Some things work better than others, right? So, okay, so that's one way to approach this. The other thing that the other thing that I want to cover, I know in the other textbook, the 101 textbook, there's an appendix that shows time value of money calculations. I'm just going to take a look.
The payback time?
A little flick through here. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah. It's table B1 on page 538. So it's the annuitized value of capital costs. And you know what? We did a little bit of this, didn't we? We wrote this out. Yeah. So there was a little bit of that in the video. The point is, on any one of these projects, you're going to have some kind of capital investment. You're going to build the technology, and then from that is going to come energy. You're going to charge utility rates, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, looking at your wind versus geothermal in this sense will give you the same set of tools. So for example, it is possible to overexploit a geothermal system. Like if you pump heat out faster than nature is putting it back, your geothermal installation might run out in 20 years, and then your payback that was supposed to pay you back in 30 never happens. Versus your wind turbine that might have a lifespan of 40 or 50, and it keeps paying back. Maybe the energy out per energy in, or dollars out per dollar in, aren't as great, but it's got a longer lifespan and it pays off further down the road. So that's more or less what that table is about, and we can get into it. One last thing I wanted to say on that is looking at some of the pressures to keep some of the coal-fired plants open. You have to realize that there are a lot of people who actually did invest a lot of money into those coal-fired power plants in the first place, and basically said, hey, I'm going to give you this money now, I'm going to want my money back later. And that's the way capital investment works. And so by denying that agreed upon capital, you're sort of breaking some kind of agreement. I don't know what they are. I haven't gone and read all these contracts, et cetera. But you can certainly appreciate that type of contract is in place, and that there are financial agreements that might be violated if some of these things are shuttered prematurely. Okay, so let's continue with the wind chapter. And hopefully we can get pretty close to finishing it today, and then get into some of the Chapter 4 time value of money calculations. So let me get back into the figures. Yes, we talked a little bit about noise, talked about scale, we talked about potential projects in England. Now, we just got done telling poor Zoe there not to put her wind turbine on her building. Well, here's one, a counterexample. And now, but let's think about it here. In this case, this building has been engineered for these turbines. I don't know if you know anything about the Hancock Tower in Boston. Some of the history of that building being built, but it was one of the tallest glass-clad structures of its kind when it was built, whenever 70s, 80s. It had a lot of problems. It was flexing enough that the glass windows were popping off. So just imagine. So what you've got. I mean the building's doing this in the wind, obviously. So you've got a glass panel attached here. This side buckles and off pops the panel and kills somebody on the ground. They solved that problem by at the top of this building, which is just a big spring, putting a damper at the top. So we almost got in there once. We tried. As well as fraternity kind of. Anyway, so you put a big pool of oil, some type of lubricating surface, and a big block of lead, concrete, something massive. So now, when the building wants to vibrate, the big mass at the top dampens it. So the building was re-engineered to reduce the amplitude of its resonant frequency of vibration. So you can imagine doing something similar here. So who knows? Each one of these little struts could have a spring damper system in it. So if you get vibrations, it's not transmitted down into the building and annoying people or causing the building to fail prematurely. So a couple different types of technology, and it looks like these have even been trademarked. And I'm yet to see any here in Montana. I have seen a few on the East Coast, but wouldn't be surprised if we don't start to see more of these. Can be a challenge, obviously, in Missoula with our kind of modest wind profiles, but anyway, there you go. Okay. Now, this is figure 739, global cumulative wind power. This is an estimate as to how much is likely to be installed. So let's just take a look at the purple reference. In each case, you can see that the up until 2009, 2010, the figures are all equal because they're historical. But let's just read what each one. So a reference scenarios, that's number one, based on the projections of the International Agency 2009 World Energy Outlook. So these guys, the IEA, are sort of a global watchdog. I don't know exactly what model they used, but with the skills that you've learned now in Summary 3, you could probably stick a line or an exponential or parabolic through that and see which one it might fit. The blue line is a moderate scenario which takes into account policy measures. So my guess would be that the reference scenario is just based purely on just regular old economics. You know, can I afford it? Is it going to be cheaper? 2 says policy measures to support renewable energy and targeted, either enacted in the planning stages around the world. So this would be more or less like where the nuclear energy industry was 50 years ago. So no mom and pop outfit's going to go build a nuclear reactor in their backyard. It's on the scale of NASA, of the Atomic Energy Agency type thing. So someone's going to put some policy in. Hey, we're going to aggressively go after wind. The government's going to put money in. There's going to be jobs, like the Hoover Dam size projects. Think of it that way. 3 says advanced scenario, which has more ambitious assumptions based on an estimate of the extent to which the wind industry could grow in a best case wind energy vision. So this might be something where wind, for whatever reason, is favored over other renewable energy technologies. What I'm a little surprised to see is they didn't include costing carbon. So, for example, if and when, it looks like wind might be now in China even. It's kind of weird, but it sounds like China is actually starting to put a price on carbon. If and when that happens globally, well, it's already happened globally. There are carbon markets globally. If this becomes mainstream globally and carbon becomes, a price on emitted carbon actually occurs, this could be even more ambitious. And I think we did a calculation last time. And what did we come up with, Sean? I think we determined that there's really enough wind energy resource on the planet. It's like 5 times what our global demand is. So if we just went wind turbine crazy across the whole planet, we could do the whole thing. Yeah. There's sort of 5 times the wind resource on planet Earth, just in conventional technologies, than our 500 exajoules per year requires. Okay. So let's just take a look at table 7.4. It says projected technical, constrained, and economically competitive potential for European wind energy. This is just Europe. We're looking at 2020 and 2030. So what we can see is that the technical potential is for onshore is 45,000 kilowatt hours, and that's what is that, 11? In that last column, is that percentages share? It doesn't say in that very last column, share of 2020 and 2030 demand. That must be, those must be percentages. Well, anyway, what we see in each case is that the technical potential in 2030 is either greater than or equal to the technical potential in 2030, obviously. Now, the constrained potential, I'm just going to read what that is. It says, this was then filtered to exclude environmentally sensitive areas, plus a number of offshore constraints such as shipping lanes, et cetera, zoning yields. So technical potential means it's there. We've got a turbine ready, you can stick it in the ground, stick it in the ocean, no problem. But you've got constraints, and that's significant. The offshore plummets by 90%. It goes from, 90%. It goes from 25,000 terawatt hours down to 2,800. And then economically competitive, the news gets a little bit better, but not much. In terms of the economically competitive, the onshore in 2030 looks to be the best bet. The technical potential was at 45,000, and it drops to 27,000. What they don't mention is whether the economically competitive. I would assume that the economically competitive, all of the constrained are a subset of the economically. Like, okay, you can do it there, and oh yeah, and it pays for itself too. So three things to consider there. So, like even with Zoe's little project, permitting is an issue. So that could constrain her project. And I hope with my offer that I lifted the economic barrier. Hopefully, yeah. No, we can definitely help those guys out. Okay, now 7.5 on page 346, wind energy capacity to meet the European Commission's SET plan. SET, so this is the Strategic Energy Technologies Plan. And when they use the word strategic, you can only think that they're like, hey, we don't want to keep buying fossil fuels from, we already burned all ours up. So if we're going to be strategic and use our own homegrown energy, it's going to be wind. So there's your strategy. So onshore, it looks like onshore they're going to hit their ceiling in 2030 and not need any more by 2050. That's actually pretty good news. Offshore starts at 55, goes to 150, all the way up to 350, for a total of 600 gigawatts. And how many homes is that? Levi, you don't get to answer because you already know the answer. Let's just take a look here. So we're looking at 600 gigawatts. How many homes is that?
Like 1,500 kilowatts?
Yeah, not that's pretty close. I'm going to call one home about a 1 kilowatt. So we're looking at 600. Wait, am I doing this right? 600 million? Whoa, I think so. Yeah. 600 times 10 to the 6th. Homes.
Homes 1 kilowatt?
Home's about a kilowatt.
Oh.
Yeah, I think you said 1,500. That's kind of a hefty, yeah, well, if you've got like electric heating or something like that. And how many people is this? You know, 'cause remember back to NRGY 101, problem set 1 or lecture 1, how many techno slaves does each human being have? Remember? I just want to put these, I mean, they're big numbers, but I want to put them in perspective, like, well, is this like a little tiny dent in Europe? Is it got the whole thing? Are they gonna start exporting electricity to Antarctica? I mean, I want to bring this into perspective.
So that 20 people are to each have 20 technosites?
Yeah.
Globally?
Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. Globally, it's a 20-to-1 ratio. North America is a buck 20-to-1. I'm going to say Europe, and I'm just kind of guessing, is probably 60-to-1. Oops, 60-to-0. 60-to-1. I'm just gonna guess. So, what is one human power?
115 watts.
Yeah, 100 watts. So this is 100 watts. So basically, we need a 60 followed by 2 zeros for each European. So each European, we're going to say, has a diet of 6,000 watts. That works out pretty nicely, because we've got 6 times 10 to the 14th, am I right? 600 gigawatts divided by 6 times 10 to the 3rd. And this is working out, this is not even right. Is this right? 600 gigawatts? Yeah. And then 6,000 watts per person. Okay, this is 1 times 10 to the 11th?
You mean 10 to the 12th? Or 11?
Oh, yeah, I screwed up the giga. Yeah,
600
thanks.
times
Yeah, I
10.
screwed up the giga, thank you. There's no way, man. Okay, yes, we are going to beam electricity to the space station with this much. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so giga is 9th, add 2 more, that's 11th. There we go. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, that's 10 to the 8th. Yeah, that's 100 million people. It's pretty good. It's more people than live in France. Might be as many as live in France and England put together. So that's some pretty good juice. Okay, so that's their strategy. Average capacity. Now that's the total capacity. Now the capacity factors now are 29% onshore, 45% offshore, a little bit better. They turn that into terawatt hours for both. And then wind powers, oh, they even have that. The EU gross demand, 4,000 terawatt hours, and that was yeah, they're not exactly clear. Oh, yeah, 4,000 terawatt hours in 2050, and so if they get to they'll be at 50% of their energies from wind by 2050. Now, this is absolutely going to have to include some kind of storage, right? I mean, if you're talking electricity, you use it when you make it. So they didn't discuss that, but some kind of pump storage, maybe some battery. But with all that water around, especially with the offshore, I can't imagine some kind of pump storage wouldn't be part of it. Fun times for the energy technologist. Okay, now the next little section here is offshore. Let's see how we're doing on time. Offshore 7.9. Yeah, I think we can let's just. Now, we'll take a break, then we'll finish the chapter, then we'll let you go. 24 minutes is enough.